नमस्कार, सगळ्यांचं स्वागत आहे आजच्या विशेष सत्रात. आजचं विशेष सत्र हे अनेक दिवस त्याची आम्ही वाट पाहत होतो. असं म्हणतात सर्वोच्च दान कोणतं तर ज्ञानदान. आपल्याला असलेली माहिती, आपल्याला समजलेल्या गोष्टी, आपल्याकडे असलेलं ज्ञान जे आहे ते इतरांना दिलं सर्वोच्च दान म्हणतात. तसाच नाही इथे होणारे सत्र याला एक आधीची परंपरा होती. तिथे लोक येतात, बोलतात, एकमेकांना ऐकतात. आणि हे सगळ्यात जास्ती कोणी करायला पाहिजे तर मुलांनी करायला पाहिजे, विद्यार्थ्यांनी करायला पाहिजे. त्यातून निर्माण होणारी ऊर्जा, त्यातून निर्माण होणारं ज्ञान जे आहे, पसरणारं जे ज्ञान ते तुमच्या सगळ्यांच्या व्यक्तिमत्वाला बदल होणार असतं, विचारांमध्ये काहीतरी स्फूर्ती देणार असते. त्याच्यामुळे ही होणारे सत्र याच्या मेसेज मध्ये सरांनी इतरांना स्फूर्ती मिळाली तर आपल्याला हवीच. पुढची 2 सत्र अशी ठरलेली आहेत त्याची माहिती पण आपल्यापर्यंत येत जाईल. पण 15-15 दिवसांनी आपण वेगवेगळ्या गोष्टींसाठी भेटू असा विचार आहे. आजचं सत्र महत्वाचं यासाठी की बुद्धिझम या मार्केट तयार झालेला, जन्मात आलेला एक धर्म, त्याची काही वेगवेगळी कारण होती उदय आला, त्या काळाची गरज म्हणून तो उदय आला. आणि आजच्या पिढीला संपूर्ण दक्षिण आशिया, पूर्व आशिया या भागामध्ये पसरला, वाढला, रुजला, सगळ्यांना पुरुष लोक त्या धर्माचा प्रवास कसा होता, विचारधारा काय, अशी कोणती विचारधारा आहे त्या धर्माला शांत त्याची काही तत्व काय आहे, त्याचा प्रवास कसा आहे हे आपल्याला आर्य कडून सांगायला लागेल. एक विषय मला वाटतं चर्चेत आला होता, चैतन्य आणि दिशा, आणि त्याच्यात मग सुरू झालेला शोध, वाचन आणि तयारी. गेली काही महिने मी त्याच्यावर तयारी करते. तर विषय काय आज आर्या काय बोलणार आपण ऐकूया. आर्या
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aarya Thorat, and I will conduct today's session. So, before we start the session, I would like to ask one question. Okay. So, has anyone heard of the term practice religiosa? I'll repeat it again. Practice religiosa. It's okay if you want to take a random guess. Please. Anyone else? The term is practice religiosa. Yes. Can you have a round of applause? Practice religiosa is the scientific name for the sacred tree that we know popularly as the Bodhi tree. This was a tree under which a young prince by the name of Siddhartha sat under some 2,500 years ago, but whose journey and his life has left an immense impact on the world. And his ideas and his principles continue to inspire generations and generations to come, even you and me today. So today we will be talking about the life, legacy, and living philosophy of Buddhism. We will be talking about the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, his journey to becoming a Buddha, as well as his principles. So there's 3 main goals of the session, which is understanding Buddhism as a philosophy, Siddhartha's journey towards becoming the Buddha, and practical and modern applications of this philosophy. Now, a question might have come in your minds, which is why Buddhism? There's so many things to talk about, but why Buddhism? So, in today's session, when I talk about Buddhism, it's not necessarily only as a organized religion, but as a philosophy and as a way of life. Buddhism also provides us on various principles. We have so many key principles, so many key doctrines that the Buddha has given us, which continue to inspire us and which are really important in today's life. So this makes Buddhism of huge relevance, apart from being a part of our UPSC studies as well. So this is a key topic, and I believe that we should all learn and try to imbibe the principles that we will be saying. You might have noticed the name, the middle part. So if it isn't clear as of right now, I'm hoping throughout the session, the name and the meaning of this title becomes clear. Story begins in the city of Kapilavastu, which is located in Lumbini. Now, Lumbini was located in southern Nepal, in the Terai plains of southern Nepal. Here, somewhere in the 6th century, in the 5th and 6th century, the Shakin clan ruled. And the Shakin clan rulers were King Shuddhodana and Queen Maya. Okay, so this was the royal couple. Now, the story gets interesting because Queen Maya Devi, one night, she has this really, really nice dream. Okay? So she dreams that she's being carried to Lake Anavatakpa. Now, Anavatakpa is in the Himalayas. So it's a very, very beautiful, very peaceful lake. So she dreams that she was carried to this lake and she was raped by heavenly bodies. Further, she saw a great big white elephant with a lotus in his tusk. And then she saw that the elephant with the lotus entered her room. Now she woke up and she was really happy with this dream. She tells King Shidduran about her dream. The royal astrologer was then called into their court and he was asked to decipher the dream to tell what the meaning of the dream was. This royal astrologer, he says that the dream is a good woman and that the king and the queen would be blessed with a little boy who would grow up to be a great world leader. So of course King Shidduran was all of the kingdom was really, really happy. Days pass, months pass, and the queen is she's supposed to be giving birth. So as per the societal traditions, she was going back to her mother's home. Right. So her mother's home was in the city of Devraha, which is 7 kilometers east of Lumbini. Now on the way here, there was this beautiful sal grove. So sal trees, there was a grove of sal trees. And the queen, she really teased the sal trees. And the queen, she really wanted to stop there. So she asked her attendants, let's wait for the afternoon. Now what happens here is she ends up giving birth in the grove. And a part of theology says that the baby, right after he was born, he stood up and he took 7 steps. And on the 7th step, he told everyone that this would be his last life. Although theological stories are not a great part of our session today. So the gist of it is that the baby boy was born. Now, of course, the kingdom was really happy, and King Shuddhodana, he calls 9 Brahmins to his royal court. Now, out of these 9 Brahmins, 8 Brahmins they say that the baby boy would grow up to be a great, great world leader, which is what Shuddhodana ideally wanted. He wanted an heir to his throne. But one Brahmin, Asita, sage Asita, what he said is this boy would grow up to be a great world teacher. Now, this shook Shuddhodana a little bit. And Asita said that this baby, who they named Siddhartha, which means enlightened, and who named him Siddhartha. So Asita says that Siddhartha would grow up, he would see 4 sides, and that is what would cause him to leave home and become a teacher. So this worries Shuddhodana. And he makes a tough resolve that I will give my child all the comfort in the world, so he would never even want or even think about leaving the royal house. So Siddhartha, he grows up with the best education and he learns a lot of subjects. At the age of 16, King Shuddhodana, he presents Siddhartha with 3 princesses to choose from for marriage, out of which he chooses Princess Yashodhara. So Yashodhara and Siddhartha get married. Now King Shuddhodana, he is so happy and he's so determined to give Gautama all the comforts of life that it is said that he had built 3 different palaces. So he built 3 palaces for 3 different seasons. So the royal bride and groom, they can live in these palaces. So we can imagine the life of luxury and comfort that Siddhartha came from. Years pass by, Siddhartha is now 29 years old. However, even with all of these comfort, all of these luxuries, he's still not satisfied. And he knows there is something eating away at him. So at the age of 29, he begged his father to let him go outside of the royal grounds. And unwillingly, but Shuddhodana arranged for a charioteer. The charioteer was Chana and his horse was Kanthava. So along with this charioteer and horse, Gautam Siddhartha, he went out on his first round of his kingdom. Here, something interesting happened. So he saw four sides. Now, out of these, the first side that he saw was an old man. So an old man was there, and he was all bent, he was weak, he was frail. So Gautam didn't understand what this was. He had never seen people like these before, right? So he asked Chana, why is this man like this? Why is he so frail? Why is he so bent? Now Chana tells Gautam that this is bound to happen with all of us at some point. We're bound to grow old. So Gautam he's shaken up a little bit. The second side that he sees is a sick person. So the sick person, he was shivering with fever, he had boils all over him. And again, Gautam was very confused. He asked Shana, why is this man shivering? What is on his body? What is happening to him? So Shana explains to him, this is a sick person. Now Gautam was so shielded from the world that he did not know any suffering or any pain of what life is. So Gautam did not understand these things. The third side that he saw was a corpse being carried to the cremation ground. So there's people weeping, there's sadness in the atmosphere. So Gautam did not really understand why there is so much suffering and why people are in so much pain. Then comes the final side, in which Gautam sees an ascetic. So there was this simply dressed ascetic. He was wearing plain yellow robes. And he was going from person to person asking for money, so asking for food. And he had this nice pleasant smile on his face. So Gautam, in that very moment, he realized that this is the path he wants to take. And this is what he wants to become. So he resolves that he wants to become an ascetic. On this very same day, when Gautam came back to his palace, Yashodhara had given birth to their son, Prince Rahula. So the kingdom was in great happiness. But Gautam's resolve was firm, his resolve was very tough, and he did not want to stay back, even though he just had his son, even though he had all possible comfort and luxuries of life. So in the middle of the night, he woke Shana up and he asked Shana, ready Kartaka, and he left him. Now something intriguing happens here. So the minute Gautam steps outside his palace, Vasavati Mara appears. Now who is Vasavati Mara? Vasavati Mara, in a way, is the villain of that story. Okay. So Vasavati Mara in Buddhism, he is described as this really vicious demon, he's really scary looking. But Vasavati Mara symbolically represents all of our desires, all of our wants, and everything that is unending. Our desires and wants are unending, right? One after the other. So Vasavati Mara appears and he threatens Gautam Buddha and he says, you shouldn't leave. So he gives him all condition possible. And he says, you have your palaces, you have your wife, you have everything, you just have had a son. So why would you want to leave? So Vasavati Mara is also, it can be understood as Siddhartha's mind psychology. So our mind is pulling us back to his desires. But here, Siddhartha doesn't pay heed to his desires to Vasavati Mara, and he leaves the palace. Now this event is known as the Great Renunciation or Mahadinishpramana in Sanskrit. Now after this Mahadinishpramana, Siddhartha leaves the palace and he reaches by a riverside. At this riverside, he cuts all of his hair off and sends it back with Chana. Now, what this signifies is letting go of your vanity. A key teaching of Buddhism is that you have to not focus too much on your vanity, but instead on your inner beauty. You have to develop your personality to self-realization. So he lets his hair go and he leaves. Now here Chana goes back with the hair and Kanthaka was said to be so sad, his horse. He was said to be so sad that he dropped dead just because of separation from his master. Now what happens is Gautam, he starts wandering around, and at that time the ascetics of the day were extreme devotees, right? So their practices were of extreme levels. Hardcore explorers of the mind who could renounce normal life and retreat to the forest. So Gautam, he sits with all of these ascetics and he tries to find out different extreme practices. So there's stories and there's notes of Gautam doing extreme fast or him biting on steel so hard that made his ears ring and his head hurt. So there's many stories of Gautam trying all of the extreme things. But after trying this for a good time, what Gautam realized is that it's not working out. So he opened his eyes and he realized that he's just in pain, he's just suffering more. So this did not work out for him. And that is when he realized that complete knowledge cannot be attained through extremes. So neither extreme indulgence nor extreme penance. So he found the middle path. So after he opened his eyes, he was sitting under a banyan tree at this time. Now in that very village, there was a woman named Sujata who mistook Gautam to be a banyan tree god. And she thought that Gautam's here to fulfill all of her wishes and other foods. So she offers Gautam some food. She offered him some rice. And so Siddharth's strength was restored by the food and he decided to stop his ascetic practices. So this led him to develop the middle path. Now, Siddhartha, he sat under this tree. What happens here is Sujata, she gives him food. So he eats food, and in the same village, there is another Brahmin who gives him grass to sit on. So, under this very tree, the tree that we just saw, the Bodhi tree, so he sits under this very tree and he decides, he makes a resolve that he won't move from here until he finds the truth of life, until he finds the meaning of life. Right? So, for 49 consecutive days, Buddha sat, Siddhartha sat under this very tree until he found the true meaning of life. He did not move. Towards the end of his meditation, Vasavati Mara appeared again. You can see the depiction of Vara as various demons. So Mara tried his hand at everything. He tried inducing fear, he tried inducing temptation. So what his goal was to get Siddhartha to go back to his original life, to go back to a life of comfort, which did not have true knowledge and true meaning. So Maravi he tried making Siddhartha afraid. When that did not work, what he did is he called three of his daughters, which were symbolics of our desires and our cravings. So these three, they tried to tempt him, they tried to get him to fall, and they tried to get him to break his fast and his meditation. But Siddhartha was unmoved and he won over the last war with Vasavati Mana and over his desires, over his inner desires. So he completely renounced every single thing. Now what happens is, towards the end, Vasavati Mara, he's so agitated and because nothing is working, he's tried all of the means, he's tried to do everything, but Siddhartha simply will not budge. So Vasavati Mara, he threatens him one last time and he asks him a very important question. He says, you're doing all of this, you've gotten the knowledge, but who is there to witness your knowledge? How do I know it's true knowledge when there is no one to witness it? So what Siddhartha did in that moment was he touched the ground, the earth that he was sitting on, he touched the earth. And this is known as the Bhumisparsha movement and the Bhumisparsha mudra. What this tells us is Buddha's enlightenment. So what was enlightenment? He touched his hand to the earth and he said, the earth is my witness. Right? So enlightenment was a win over desires. It also shows the middle path and it was the foundation of Buddhism. So Buddhism, where it gets its foundation is from this movement where Siddhartha finds true knowledge. Now, after he opened his eyes, he did not immediately leave from the tree. For 49 days, he sat there, and on the 50th day, he opened his eyes. For the next 7 weeks, he still spent under that very same tree. So the first week under the Bodhi tree, he spent just in the bliss of the knowledge that he had gained. He spent one full week understanding what he had just witnessed. In the second week, he spent gazing at the tree. So this is also important because when he gazed at the tree, he was appreciating his environment. He was appreciating the shelter he got. He was appreciating the protection he got from the tree, from the earth, from all his environment. Right? In the third week, the third and the fourth week are tales of theology. So in the third week, Buddha is said to have conjured up a golden witch because the demigods in the sky, all of the Buddhist gods in the sky, they were also unsure if has he really got an enlightenment. So Buddha is said to have conjured up a golden witch as a sign to show them that he was indeed enlightened. In the fourth week, Buddha is said to have built a jewel chamber around him. So he was sitting in the chamber of various colored gems and jewels. And how we can understand this rationally is that Buddha, when we say you're enlightened, all 7 of your chakras are activated. Right? So there's a concept in our philosophy of chakras. We have 7 chakras from our crown to our abdomen. So all these 7 chakras were activated. And if you're aware, every single chakra has a different color to it. So it was said that he was glowing completely. So the jewel chamber rationally talks about the Buddha having completely enlightened, so that he was glowing out. In the fifth week, three daughters of Mara returned and they tried to tell him, but he was past all of that and he did not, he won the Nobel, he did not pay heed to them. In the sixth week, what happens is during Buddha's meditation, a serpent came, he coils himself around Buddha. Because it was really familiar with this family. So the serpent king who knew of Buddha's enlightenment, his name was Mukalinda, and he coils himself around the Buddha and he also protects himself from the rain. Right? And in the last and the final week, before he leaves the Bodhi tree, the Buddha broke his fast, and then there's the story of the two merchants. So, how he broke his fast was two merchants in that village, he offered him food. And Buddha told him about the knowledge that he had gotten, and he was so impressed that these were the first followers of Buddha, these were the first people Buddha ordained. So in that time, there was no concrete order of the Sangha or the Buddhist community, but these were the first people that Buddha gave his teachings to. Now, after 7 weeks, Buddha leaves the companionship of the tree and he moves on ahead. So he reaches the deer path, which is in Sarnath, near Banaras, on a full moon day. It's the month of July, it's a full moon day, and Buddha reaches this path. Now, earlier in the story, what had happened was, a part is when Buddha was going extreme practices, he was doing extreme penance. So, the out of the eight Brahmins that had come to name him, that had come to talk about his life, 5 of their sons, they had left in search of the Buddha. So they were so impressed with Buddha doing extreme practices. Now these 5 were known as the Panchavarya, and they followed Buddha for a while. However, later Buddha, as we saw, he realized that the path wasn't in extremes, but in the middle way. So they left him in that moment because they thought that Buddha was not, he did not have strong enough resolve. Okay, so after Buddha attained enlightenment, he met these 5 again, and they were so impressed by him that they decided to become his followers. So the Panchavarya were the ones, the 5 companions were the ones who Buddha gave his first sermon to. Now Buddha's first sermon is known as the Dhammacakka Pravartana Sutra in Pali and the Dharmacakra Pravartana Sutra in Sanskrit. In English, it's known as the wheel. It's known as the sermon of the wheel of turning of time. So Buddha, in this sermon, he gave us the very core and foundational doctrines of Buddhism. The first that we saw is the doctrine of the middle way, Majjhima Pratipada. Now, what is Majjhima Pratipada? Buddha said that the path to enlightenment lies between the extremes of self-indulgence and self-denial. So he believed, he was a firm believer that you cannot pull yourself to any extremes. You cannot be drowning in luxury, neither can you be taking yourself out from anything and everything. There has to be a middle way. So this was his doctrine of the Majjhima Pratipada. Then later, the 4 noble truths, the Chaturarya Aarya Satyagi, which we all famously know of Buddhism. So these 4 truths are: life is suffering. Suffering is driven by desire, tanha. Cessation of suffering is possible by nirodha. And the way is the Eightfold Path or the Ashtangika Marga. Now the Buddha said that what he basically got from his meditation and enlightenment was the 4 truths of life. He said that human life is suffering, human life is pain. The word for that is dukkha. And he gave a cause for this pain. He said that our desires, our tanha, our cravings are the cause for this pain. Further, he said that he was not all pessimistic, and he said that cessation or ending of the suffering is possible. He also gave a path to end the suffering. Now, this path is known as the Ashtangika Marga. Why Ashtangika? Because it is composed of 8 elements. So, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, livelihood, effort, concentration, and right mindfulness. Now, what is right view? Right view is a view about the 4 noble truths. So, when we are on this journey of knowledge, we need to collect the right knowledge. Right? The second element is right intention. So, our intentions towards life, our intentions towards ourselves, our intention towards knowledge. All of these have to be on the right path. Further, we said we need to have right speech, which is not lying, not gossiping, basically not wasting our time in all of this idle talk. But instead, we need to talk politely and we need to talk truthfully. The fourth element is right action. So it is an extension of right speech. In right action, we need to make sure the way or the path, the goal that we're going towards is right. The next is right livelihood. So Buddha said that any occupation or any profession that includes the usage of weapons or that includes thieving or killing is not right for us, and we should only engage in professions which are true, which are economical, and which are ethical. Further, he talked about right effort. Right effort is our effort towards our life again. So all of these are also intermingled in a way. Further, he talks about right concentration and right mindfulness. Right concentration involves understanding ourselves, so understanding our mental process, understanding how I work, understanding how my mind is, right? And then using those and then bettering these processes. So how do we better? Buddhism tells us that it is through meditation, it is through discipline. So these are the 8 elements of the Ashtanga Marga or the Eightfold Path. Further, the last the last doctrine, the last part that he gave in his first sermon was the theory of dependent origination or Pratikya Samupada. And Pratikya Samupada in Pali, this is in Sanskrit. Now, this is one of his tougher doctrines in a way. So that what he said is everything is dependent in its origination. Now, what we understand simply from these two words is everything comes one after another. There is nothing that is independent, right? So, Buddha said that nothing is self-sufficient in itself. Nothing arises from itself. Everything arises because something else has already arisen or risen before it. So, she also explained it with a very easy example. So what we said was, we gave the example of an oil lamp. Now an oil lamp has oil, it has a wick, and then it burns flame. Okay. So if we remove the wick and the oil, the flame is not going to burn. So we said that the wick or the flame is depending on causal factor of the oil and the wick. So there's also another example of the seed. So the seed, it needs soil, it needs sunlight, it needs air, and it needs water to grow. So all of these are causal factors. So everything is dependent on something. He gave 12 names of dependent origination, which is basically, he was talking about this theory with reference to rebirth and suffering. The cessation from this cycle of rebirth and why this cycle arises. So this 12 names: ignorance, formation, consciousness, name and form, 6 sense spheres, contact, feeling, craving, clinging, becoming, birth, aging, and death. We'll understand this by first going clockwise and then anti-clockwise. So what Buddha says is everything arises because we are ignorant, because we do not know the truth. Naturally, because if we know the truth, we'll break free from this cycle. So everything is rising out of our ignorance or our avidya. Now, because we are ignorant, it leads to formations. Now, what is formations? Formations are basically actions that we indulge in due to which we accumulate karma. Right? So now that we have accumulated karma, we are in the cycle of rebirth. So after these formations, it leads to consciousness. Karma only acts through our consciousness. It needs something to act through, right? So consciousness. After consciousness arises name and form. Now, where is this consciousness located? It's located in our mind. It's located in our mental systems. It's located within us. So our name and form arise after consciousness. When the mind arises, the body arises. Now, what does the body have? The body has 6 sense spheres, which are our sense, there are senses of sight, smell, touch, all of those. So, what we do with these sense organs is we make contact. We make contact with the world. Okay. So, after we make contact, there is bound to be some things that we like. There is bound to be some things that we crave. So it leads to feeling of craving and clinging. So when we feel these things, when we experience these things, when we experience these body things, then it's going to lead to us getting stuck in this cycle of craving, of feeling. This leads to clinging and basically the want or the need to want to experience that feeling again and again throughout births. is what gives a fetus the will to become, is what Buddhism says. Right? So this will to become or this power is what leads to actually the birth of the fetus. So baby is born only because it has the will to be born. And then there's the life, there's a course of life, including aging and death. Simply, if we go backwards now, it begins or ends at death and aging. Where does aging happen? Why does aging happen? Because we are born. Now, why does our birth happen? Because we have the will to be born, which is our power. Where does this will to be born come from? It comes from clinging, craving, and feeling. What kind of feeling if we are not born? It's feeling and craving of our earlier lives. So Buddha is saying that we are stuck in the cycle of rebirth. So these are feelings and cravings and contacts that we have made in our earlier lives. Right? How did we make these contacts? It's through our six sense organs. Now, how did we understand when we made contact? How did we understand what we're experiencing? It's because of our mind and our body, our name and our form. And who gave our mind, or where did our mind get the power to understand, to make sense, is through our consciousness. Okay. Now, the root of consciousness was our consciousness. So consciousness came. We came into being only because we engaged in activities that led to karmic baggage. So once we accumulate karma, we are in that cycle again and again. And this karma was accumulated because we are evil. I hope everyone got that. So these were the four major doctrines that Buddha taught. After this, he began accumulating followers. He began ordaining those people as monks in Bali. His second sermon, which is known as the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, also known as the Panchavatya Sutta, or discourse of the not self characteristic. Now, if you look at the word anatta, it is is negation and atta. So atta is basically ourselves, our characteristics. And he says so he's negating our characteristics. So he basically says that our characteristics are not us. So Ananta, nothing in the world, including the self, is permanent or substantial. Everything is constantly changing and subject to decay. This also, he's explained it by saying that nothing is constant. Everything is in constant change of flux, in constant motion. So how he explains this is, when we pour oil or when we pour water, what we see is a stream of water, a stream of oil. But if we look at it closely, we notice that there's drops. It's tiny minuscule drops that we don't see. But there's drop after drop after drop, which makes it look like it's a stream. But this does not mean that it's water. So he's saying that our characteristics are not us. We are further than that. The next that he talked about was the five khandas or aggregates that constitute a being. So form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, which was also mentioned in his Ashtanga Marga or Ashtanga Marga. Further, we talked about not self. So, as we discussed right now, that our aggregates are not us. This means that they are not permanent. This means they are not a permanent, unchanging entity that one can identify with. So, we are further beyond our formations. We are further beyond whatever we are feeling. And the final thing we talked about was liberation. So, by understanding the nature of anatta, one can develop dispassion towards these aggregates and ultimately achieve liberation from suffering. So he's giving ways and he's talking about the major problems that we face, and he's also giving the solutions, as we saw in the Ashtanga Marga, as we see here. Now, after this, Buddha continued his journey. Here we can see Yasa, which was the sixth person Buddha ordained or Buddha included in his lordship or hunship. He was the sixth figure. Who was Yasa? Yasa was one of the princes at the time. We can see that Buddhism was beginning to spread far and wide, and even princes, even people of the royal families, they wanted to be ordained. And this led to the formation and growth of the Sangha. The Sangha was the name for the official Buddhist society. Time goes by, there are certain philosophical tales, such as the Urvela Kashyapa story, in which Buddha is said to have performed miracles basically. So there's miracles of floating, there's miracles of him beating a fire dragon and whatnot. So the gist of all of this, the rationale behind all of this is that Buddha was able to convince people that he was enlightened, and Buddha was able to tell people that this is actually the true path. Right? Then Buddhism also saw its first monastery, which was in Velluvana Park, Rajgriha, and the patron king of this was King Bindisara. Now, what happened in this Velluvana Park, in where the first monastery, first Buddhist monastery, was the Govada Patikopa sermon. Now, here, this was the first big sermon of Buddhism, wherein 1250 monks gathered. This mark was a gift from the king of Rajgriha to the Buddha. And in this sermon, Buddha says to cease from all evil, to do good things, and to purify one's mind. It's a concise outline of the Buddhist path to enlightenment, including ethics, meditation, and wisdom. So here he again talks about ethics, meditation, and wisdom. One thing that stands out about Buddhism is Buddha focused on the here and now. He was not too concerned about what happens before and what happens after, but he was concerned about life as it is, as we are experiencing right now. The next is the Ajapala Nigroda Monastery, which was in Kapilavastu. Now, Buddha, it's been a lot of years, right? So, Buddha has attained enlightenment. He left from his home at the age of 29. So, by now, he's attained enlightenment. He's made a lot of followers. He has a concrete society that is the Sangha. But King Shuddhodana, he was really asking Buddha to come back to Kapilavastu, to come back to his home. But Buddha, the stories of him declining. So Buddha did not go until he wanted to. And the slowly saying King Shuddhodana sent armies or men in thousands of numbers and they disappeared without traces. So Buddha didn't want to return, but finally, after a lot of years, he decided to return from Rajgriha to Kapilavastu, and he and his 20,000 disciples. So this is a lot of disciples by this time. So you can see the power and the growth of the Sangha. And he reached Kapilavastu. In Kapilavastu, he gave a sermon in which it's a symbolic red rail. Now, the part of theology, the part of story is saying that during this sermon, red rain fell on everyone. But it was not every single monk, it was only fell on who wanted. So basically, any monk that wanted the rain to fall on him, it only fell on him. Now, symbolically speaking, this says or this tells us that whichever monk or whoever person was ready to accept and learn the knowledge, to learn the education that Buddha was imparting, only he was able to understand this knowledge. After reaching Kapilavastu, after returning to Kapilavastu, he met his wife Yashodhara. He also met his son Rahula, and what a Samanera is basically he also ordained Rahula. So he included him in. He also made him a monk. He made him a priest. Now this enraged King Shuddhodana naturally because he was the only remaining heir. So after this, King Shuddhodana made a rule. He made Buddha make a rule that no one should be able to join the Sangha without the permission of the elders or owners. Buddha continued traveling and teaching the Dharma. His Sangha was growing day by day. Finally, around the age of 80, Buddha passed away, and this event is known as the Mahaparinirvana in Sanskrit or the Mahaparinirvana in Pali. Now, how this happened is Buddha was really old at this time, and while walking from one place to another, he said he has stopped midway, and Kunda, so Kunda, who was a metal worker, prepared the meal for Buddha, and this was also Buddha's last meal. We've heard many stories about this, saying Buddha ate food, Buddha ate this and that he passed away. There's two ways to look at this. So the words Sukara Madhava, prepared by him, he served the blessed one, and with the other food hard and soft, he served the community of Hindus. Now, after eating this food, Buddha said, do not give it to the community because this is food that only can be registered by the Buddha himself. The word Sukara, meaning pig and bull, and Madhava, meaning delicate and well-liked, soft and tender. So, Sukara Madhava, it has two interpretations, it has two meanings. So, it can either, as we commonly know, can mean the part of a pig or a goat. And secondly, it can mean food that is enjoyed by people or food that is prepared to be soft and delicate, which can include mushrooms or truffles or yams or tubers. So, although the story goes by this interpretation, this is also another common interpretation because in Buddhism they are not allowed to eat meat that is specifically killed for the purpose of eating. So, they say that if an animal is dead naturally, they can eat it only if they have to. So, according to rationale, the second one fits better. So soon after he ate, a dire sickness fell upon him, even dysentery, and he suffered sharp and deadly pains that the blessed one endured them mindfully, clearly, unforgettable. So Buddha, he continued his journey to Kushinagar. After eating this, he was on his way and he continued his journey to Kushinagar. On the way, he stopped and he asked Ananda. Now, Ananda was one of his venerable disciples. So he asked Ananda to bring him some water. When Ananda went to bring Buddha some water, he met Tukasa, who was a village man, and Tukasa, he told Tukasa all of his knowledge, all the knowledge about Buddhism. And Tukasa was so impressed that he also wanted to be ordained by the Buddha. So they both reached where the Buddha is resting, and while ordaining, what he did was he was making the Buddha wear robes. He was giving him new robes to wear. Now, he observed the skin of the Buddha becoming exceedingly clear and radiant. The Buddha told him that there were only two occasions when a Tathagata's body was in such a state. Now, Tathagata is also another name for the Buddha. So, the two states were the first was Nirvana of enlightenment, and the second was of Mahaparinirvana, which was the state of passing away. So, everyone now knew that the Buddha was close to passing away, and all of them were sad. But the Buddha told them not to try because he told them that you also need not find any other teacher after me. But he told them that you must rely on whatever knowledge I've given you, and you must rely on your discipline and on your capacity to follow this knowledge and attain self-realization. So the Buddha passed away in Kushinagar, and there were a couple of silent teachings of Buddha. The first is Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. So he talks about taking refuge or finding solace in three main things: in the Buddha himself, in Dharma, and in the Sangha. Further, he also talked about the importance of generosity, moral conduct, and of mind training for this self-realization and self-awareness. This is a carving of Buddha's Mahaparinirvana. We can see the water people down, and we can see the gods in the sky who were also really happy that the Buddha was reaching there. After the Buddha's death, there were four main Buddhist councils that took place. The first one, whose patron king was Ajatashatru, it was held in Rajgriha. The second was held in Vaishali, third in Patliputra, and fourth in Kashmir in Kunalgarh. So, in the first Buddhist council, what they did was all of these venerable students, all of these learned students, they came together to write, to impart the teaching of the Buddha, to discuss the teaching of the Buddha, and to discuss the way forward. Now, how this was done? It's through the three jewels of Buddhism: the Vinaya Pitaka, the Pitaka, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. However, the Abhidhamma Pitaka was not written during the first council. The Vinaya and the Sutta Pitaka were written. Now, what were these Pitakas? The Vinaya Pitaka talked about the rules and regulations of Buddhist life for following the code of the Sangha as well as for the Bhikkhu and Bhikkhunis. In the second council, however, something happened, and there were tiny disagreements and tiny fights about the way forward. So few disciples, they believed that we should continue and strictly follow the original teaching of Buddha, while others were more accepting. They wanted to broaden their horizons more, and they said that we need to take further way down. So here, two schisms or two sects formed, which was the Thaviravadins and Mahasanghikas. In the third, here what happens is the Abhidhamma Pitaka was written. Now, Abhidhamma Pitaka ideally it talks about metaphysical questions. Now, the one thing that we know from Buddhist life is that Buddha did not entertain metaphysical questions too much. So, the Abhidhamma Pitaka was written by the Mahasamhita. In the fourth council, Abhidhamma and Mahasamhitas turned into Hinayan and Mahayana. Now, Hinayan, in its word, means the lesser grateful, while Mahayana means the greater grateful. However, Hinayan is a derogatory term, so we use the word Theravada. Now, Theravada is the teaching of the elders, as the name suggests. So, what they believed in was sticking to the strict teachings of Buddha, while the Mahayana, they believed in expanding. Further, from Mahayana school came the Vajrayana school. Vajra means thunderbolt, but it's said to be a wheel of thunderbolt, but also the wheel of lightning. The Theravada school is orthodox and true to the teachings of Buddha. Mahayana, as we saw, is flexible and accepting. While Vajrayana, they use mantras, they use visualizations, they also worship different gods and goddesses. Vajrayana is also considered tantric or Zen Buddhism. So, how they do this, how they share their attachment, is through rigorous discipline. While the Mahasamhitas or the Mahayanas, they believe in the state of Shunyata. So this is done through strict discipline and strict meditation. Sthaviravadins, they talked about Sila, Samadhi, and Prajna, moral conduct, meditation, and discipline. Right? Sthaviravadins or the Theravadins were also more orthodox, and they believed that women were inferior to men. They believed that women were also not capable of achieving enlightenment, and they said that women had to be born as a man to finally achieve enlightenment. This was not the case in Mahayana, who treated men and women as equals. Now, there's a few other schools of Buddhism as well. There's Pure Land Buddhism, Secular Buddhism, Yellow Hat Buddhism, and Navayan Buddhism. What is Pure Land Buddhism? As the name suggests, there is a land that is completely pure. It's definitely not earth. So, in Buddhism, there's the concepts of different rankings of various heavens. There's a hierarchy of heavens. So, the highest heaven is known as Sukhavati. Now, this school of Buddhism believes that every creature has to reach its ultimate sukha. Next is the secular Buddhism. There is no realms and reincarnation. They only focus on self-improvement. So here and now. The third is the yellow hat Buddhism. Yellow hat gets its name from the distinct yellow hat that the monks wear in this school. And this is a very strict school. They also follow Zen or Tantric methods. And last is the Navayan Buddhism, what we commonly know as Ambedkarite Buddhism. Ambedkarite Buddhism did not believe in the four noble truths and four teachings of Buddhism, but they believed in equality and upliftment. This is a map showing how Buddhism spread. So this orange circle is where Buddhism started. So it's in the Ganges Valley in 5th century. The yellow arrows are the earliest Buddhist outreach. So from Nepal it came to India. Like Buddha came to Bodh Gaya in Nepal. After which orange is Theravada. So we can see that Theravada went downwards. It went in the southeast. The grey arrows we can see is the spread of Mahayana. Now, if you notice, Mahayana Buddhism, because it was accepting and flexible, it spread the most. And it's still actively practiced in many regions. And Vajrayana Buddhism, it spread downwards. Vajrayana did not spread too much because it has tantric and Zen practices. But we can still see it practiced even today in places like Tibet. The final school is the Ambedkarite Buddhism or Neo Buddhism that we just saw. Its name is Navayan, which literally means new faith, because it was a new ideology. Which emerged as a way to challenge the caste system and proves a new perspective on Buddhism that resonates with the experiences of Dalits. He rejected the Buddhist doctrines. He did not believe in the Four Noble Truths. B.R. Ambedkar, he also emphasized social justice, equality. So his fight was basically against the caste system. And he adopted Buddhism after he decided to let go of Hinduism or Brahminical practices. The final part, and the most important part that we're going to talk about today, is Buddhism and why and how it's relevant in our modern world today. Right? So there's 5 subheadings: philosophy and ethics, governance ethics, mental health and therapy, pop culture, and environmentality. So, in philosophy and ethics, Buddhism is really, really useful in today's world because Buddhism, in the Eightfold Path that we've seen, we've talked about the notions of mindfulness and compassion. So, in today's world, as a person, we need to have all of these attributes, which is mindfulness and compassion. Mindfulness because it is a really a fast-paced world. We need to pace ourselves. We need to bring ourselves with here and now, as well as being compassionate when dealing with other people. An example of this is the MBSR programs. MBSR programs are mindfulness-based stress programs. So these are run in certain hospitals wherein they use the practice of mindfulness to help patients with chronic pain, right? So they teach them about becoming more resilient and becoming more self-reliant and not focusing too much on their pains. The second part is in governance and ethics. So Buddhism has given us the holistic growth principle because it believes that the growth of everyone is necessary and an overall growth is necessary. So in today's world, we can see that growth is really focused or calculated only by the growth of economies. But another example of this governance ethics and the Buddhism relation is the happiness concept, happiness index concept in Bhutan. Right? So Bhutan has used this happiness index wherein they measure this growth of the nation also on the satisfaction of their people. The next part is mental health and therapy. Again, mindfulness and acceptance. There's two major therapies, DBT and ACT. DBT is dialectical behavior therapy and ACT acceptance and commitment therapy. These are again linked in Buddhism in the Eightfold Path. There's many mentions of compassionate, there's many mentions of acceptance, even coming to terms with the problem that we have. So we saw that Buddha in the Eightfold Path, we also talked about you need to understand yourself, you need to understand your mental formations, and then you need to better. So this is where Buddhism comes into play in mental health. Next is a fun little part of pop culture. So we can see ideas of illusion, karma, awakening, and rebirth. Movies like Inception, which most of us have seen. So, and Matrix and Star Wars, all of these have these Buddhist ideas. And finally, environmentalism. Now there's a concept of deep ecology. Deep ecology, what it means is that everyone is interconnected. So humans, animals, flora, fauna, all of them are interconnected. So this is a Buddhist philosophy. And then there is also preordination methods. Now this happens mostly in areas like Myanmar and Thailand, wherein what they do is they consider a tree a god or a stage. So it's not cut down. People worship this. So this also helps us maintain our nation. Before concluding the session, we have a small activity. It's a 3-minute meditation, only 3 minutes. Now, what this is about is this is about mindfulness. We talked about in our modern day world how fast-paced our world is and how we need to be mindful, how we need to center ourselves. So we'll be doing this small meditation. What people are exposed for other women also. You gently rub your palms and then face a little hands. With that, we will continue. Thank you.
Nice session. Meetings I know, meetings I didn't, so we are very insightful. A couple of questions. One might be the easier level, another would be little difficult. Maybe it should be easier for both of them, be easier for you, but I'm just guessing the second one will be easier. So I start with the first one. Between the sixth week or seventh week of the beginning that knowledge after finishing it, from he gave his teachings to his first follower, first disciples. Is there any record or anything mentioned what was exactly? Because it was first teaching and they immediately joined it. So it must be something very powerful or something like that. Is there any mention in the history of anything?
Whatever information I have given is from reference. Even I can't remember the exact thing that he said, but as we discussed, the first knowledge that we got was of the four noble truths. So, by that rationale, I'm pretty sure that is going to be told. Because that's the meaning that he able to give us.
The second part, whatever I have heard about this jet, the first thing you mentioned, that in the book, about the, I think it's a most popular story. The second thing you mentioned is that is there any possibility to cover up that he didn't eat the meat, which is exactly going against his teaching. So the later years or later era, his followers made up that story. No more difference in interpretation. I think is this. It happens in every theology. It's nothing new. It happens in Jainism, Buddhism, Sanatana, Christianity. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. Do you think that it is like that, or the second interpretation is right?
It's like the first is the most popular, so it has to be based on some truth. But words like they are interpreted differently by us. So as we saw, it's either the direct interpretation, so meaning of the figure of the word, or it's also As I said, if the food enjoyed by these animals also is a third interpretation. The food crushed by the feet of the pig, which made it poisonous, which was again things like some mushrooms or drugs that was which was poisonous. So there's multiple interpretations, and as you said very correctly, that people do make up these interpretations to satisfy whatever it is that they are trying to do. So it's not possible to reach the very truth of what happened, but you can understand all the possible interpretations and really what it is.
There is one question, same that does the concept of another reject the idea of Atma?
Buddha did not believe in soul. Buddha only believed in the idea of rebirth, and Buddhism as a philosophy, it rejects completely the idea of soul. So it does not believe in anything that is eternal and unchanging. So he says that we are changing every single day. We also saw that in the example of the oil and the water. So it's not one stream, but it's different molecules, different small minuscule molecules. So there is nothing that is eternal unchanging. There is not a singular stream of water. Neither there is a singular soul in us that is eternal. So it completely changes.
Why the karma
Because they do still believe in rebirth. They do not believe that it is, they do not believe this rebirth is happening because of this unchanging entity, but they believe it is because of an accumulated karma. So it keeps on moving.
One more question. Same like it's the best principle, most important principle according to you.
Four truths are something that captivates me because he's not only talking the pessimistic level, he's also given a solution. So that is very important. On the broader level, principles of ethical living is really, really important because today we live in a really morally gray world. So ethical living and looking at ourselves and being on the path, making yourself self-present was what I think is very important. While keeping your calm, so we find.
We have some online paintings also. Padmaja Kulkarni, do you have some question? तुम्हाला काही प्रश्न आहे का? खूप सुंदर सेशन झालं आम्हाला नवीन इन्साइट्स पण मिळाले आणि अभ्यास पूर्ण पद्धतीने तयारी केलेली होती थँक्यू सो मच खूप चांगलं सेशन झालं गुजरात शाळेत आणि आम्हाला आशा आहे की पुन्हा एकदा आशा आहे की सत्रासाठी पण भेटू थँक्यू